Chapter 2. More Mahatma Teaching. Attainment. One gets no reward for attainment. When one understands the idea, one does not want a reward. As Krishna said, "You have the right to work, but not the right to the fruit thereof." Perfect attainment is simply worship, and worship is attainment. If you sit down and realize that you only think by virtue of the one life, and that the mind, animated by the one life into the act of thinking, is a part of the whole which is God, then you argue your mind out of existence as a separate entity, and the result is that mind and body physically, so to speak, disappear, and the only thing that remains is being, which is at once existence and non-existence, and not explainable in words or ideas. A master cannot help being perpetually in this state, with only this difference that in some, to us, incomprehensible way, he can use mind and body and intellect too, without falling back into the delusion of having a separate consciousness. There is no explaining these things. As Vivekananda said, "You do not help the world at all by wishing or trying to do so, but only by helping yourself." Religion. It is useless to speculate, useless to try and take mental or intellectual grasp and work from that. That is only religion, a code for children and for social life, a guide to help us to avoid shocks so that the inside fire may burn up the nonsense in us and teach us a little sooner common sense, that is, a knowledge of the delusion of separateness. Religion, whether it be Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Theosophy, philosophy, or any other kind of ism or Sufi or system, can only take us to the one point where all religions meet and no further. God. That one point where all religions meet is the realization in no mystical sense, but in the most worldly and everyday sense. And the more worldly, everyday and practical, the better. The fact that God is everything and everything is God. From this point, the work of the practice of this mental comprehension begins, and all it amounts to is the breaking of a habit. One has to cease calling things things and to call them God, and instead of thinking them to be things, to know them to be God. Instead of imagining existence to be the only thing possible, to realize that existence is only the creation of the mind. For if there were not existence, the mind could not see anything, and that non-existence is a necessity if you are going to postulate existence. The knowledge of things only shows the existence of an organ to cognize. There are no sounds to the deaf, nothing to see for the blind, and the mind is merely an organ of conception or of appreciation of certain sides of God. God is infinite, and therefore existence and non-existence are merely component parts. Not that I wish to say God is made up of definite component parts. It is hard to be comprehensible when talking of God. True knowledge comes from within and not from without, and true knowledge is not knowing but seeing. Realization. Realization is nothing but seeing God literally. You must read all I write literally. Our greatest mistake is that we think of God as acting symbolically and allegorically instead of practically and literally. Take a piece of glass, paint colors and forms on it, and put it into a magic lantern. Turn on a white light, and the colors and forms painted on the glass are reproduced on the screen. If that light were not turned on, you would not see the colors of the slide on the screen. How are colors formed? By breaking up white light with a many-sided prism. So is it with a man's character. It is seen when the light of life, that is God, is shining through it, that is, in a man's actions. If the man is asleep or dead, you do not see his character. Only when the light of life is animating the character and causing it to act in 1,000 different ways in response to its contact with this many-sided world can you perceive a man's character. If white light had not been broken up and put into forms and shapes on our magic lantern slide, we should never have known there was a piece of glass in front of the light, for the light would have shone clearly through. In a sense, that white light was marred and had some of its clearness taken from it by having to shine through the colors on the glass. So is it with an ordinary man. His mind is like the screen. On it shines the light, dulled and changed because he has allowed the many-sided world to stand in the way of the light and break it up. He sees only the effects of the light instead of the light himself, and his mind reflects the effects he sees just as the screen reflects the colors on the glass. Take away the prism and the colors vanish, absorbed back into the white light from whence they came. Take away the colors from the slide and the light shines clearly through. Take away from our sight the world of effects we see, and let us look only into causes, and we shall see the light. A master in meditation, though the eyes and ears be open, fixes his attention so firmly on, quote, that which sees, that he neither sees nor hears, nor has any physical consciousness at all, nor mental either, but only spiritual. We must take away the world which causes our doubts, which clouds our mind, and the light of God will shine clearly through. How is the world taken away? When, for example, instead of seeing a man you say, quote, this is God animating a body, which body answers more or less perfectly to the direction of God as a ship answers more or less perfectly to her helm. Sins. What are sins? Why, for example, does a man drink too much? Because he hates the idea of being bound by the incapacity to drink as much as he wishes. He is striving after liberty in every sin he commits. This striving after liberty is the first instinctive action of God in a man's mind, for God knows that he is not bound. Drinking too much does not give a man liberty, but then the man does not know that he is really seeking liberty. When he realizes that, he sets about seeking the best way to obtain liberty. But the man only gains that liberty when he realizes that he was never bound. The I's who feel so bound are really the illimitable spirit. I am bound because I know of nothing that I do not sense by one of the senses, whereas I am all the time that which senses in everybody, in every mind. These bodies and minds are only the tools of the I, the illimitable spirit. What do I want with tools who am the tools themselves as the colors or the white light? Jesus, the man, was utterly unconscious when he worked his miracles and spoke his wonderful words. It was the white light, the life, who is the cause and the effect, acting in perfect concert. My Father and I are one. Give up the idea of I and mine. Can the body possess anything? Can the mind possess anything? Lifeless tools are both, unless the light of God be shining through. These things which we see and sense are only the split up colors of the one illimitable spirit. Worship. How can you best worship God? Why? By not trying to worship Him, but by giving up your whole self to Him and showing that every thought, every action is only a working of that one life, more or less perfect according as it is unconscious or conscious. God works perfectly in our unconscious virtuous actions. A master, when instructing, is far from any thought of instructing, but to feel a doubt or a difficulty in his presence is to call forth at once, before you can express the doubt, the wonderful words which will clear away that doubt. The words never fail, and the master, with his heart fixed on God, realizing perfectly that no action is a personal one, making no claims to have either originated the thought or to have been the means of destroying a doubt, saying never I or mine, seeing only God in every thought and action, whether they be yours or his, feels no surprise, no especial pleasure to himself in having allayed your doubt. He never desires to feel pleasure. He says, who is it that feels pleasure? Why, God. What is pleasure? Why, the appreciation, instinctive or otherwise, of God. Who is the so-called I? I is God. God is pleasure. If I desire perpetual pleasure, I must forget myself and be that which is pleasure itself, that is God. A master sacrifices his whole self, lets it down as an artificial idea into the ocean of God who is, literally the material and the cause of everything, and becomes the embodiment of happiness. Similarly, he flinches every personal desire aside, even the desire for virtue. He denies it being his own action and attributes it to God, till he becomes the embodiment of that personal virtue he once desired, and no one can come near him without being blessed. He is the embodiment of all virtues. Such is true worship and its results.